to share with you. Mike McCarthy, fired in Green Bay. Question marks coming into this game. About how hot the seat was for the Packers coach. And this team, 4-6-1 before today, 4-7-1 afterward. This is a team that had not missed the playoffs in consecutive years since 2005, 2006. But as it stands now, the playoffs are the least of their worries. And McCarthy is out. Joe Philbin will take over as the interim in Green Bay. But them not wasting any time, deciding to make a decision now. Look, this is a team that has not traditionally made quick, knee-jerk reaction type decisions, especially when it comes to coaching. But today, they feel like, look, we got to make a change. First of all, to change the momentum of the season, but also the direction that this franchise is going in, because with Aaron Rodgers turning 35 today, that window is just ever so slowly creeping
and
close.
That's why they make the decision. I mean, you have a future Hall of Fame quarterback on your roster. Your window is getting thin to win Super Bowls. Mike McCarthy in this offense, I don't see the designs I'm seeing from an Andy Reid, Sean McVay, Shanahan. You have to expand. Get Aaron Rodgers easier throws. The guy's doing it himself. He's extending plays. He's being accurate with the football. But look, if he's not carrying the football team and making those spectacular plays, I don't see it in this offense. And that's why I think this decision was made.
Well, in this case, I was there when I was drafted there when Mike McCarthy's first year, and it was Favre at the time. And it was a situation where, he kind of couldn't really coach Favre because Favre's been there for 100 years,
Right.
So eventually they had to move on from him. In this case, the relationship is just interesting. You see videos of like Tom Brady and Belichick meeting and going over stuff like that. You don't see that type of relationship between them two. So it's really interesting. I think in this case, like you said, they're not as dynamic. They don't have to be as dynamic, but they do have to get the pieces around it and find a way to get everyone else involved.
Some head-scratching aspects to this offense as well. You look at them not using Aaron Jones as much until recently, a guy who's a dynamic playmaker, and you could tell there was some tension there between him and his quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. You didn't know coming into this game that it would be Mike McCarthy's last, but we want to show you how things unfolded on the field today, because had they gotten a W against Arizona, you think he might still be the head coach. But earlier on, Aaron went final Cardinals winners, moving to 3-9. Packers falling to 4-7-1. 20-17 is the final score. And we'd like to get a little bit more analysis and insight into this decision in Green Bay, letting Mike McCarthy go. I want to bring in Ian Rappaport on the phone to weigh in on this one. And Ian, what have you heard out of Green Bay?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things at play here. First of all, this was coming. And, from the people I've spoken with that we've reported on it the last couple of weeks, this was something where the writing was clearly on the wall. It had been, about a decade for Mike McCarthy, won a Super Bowl, obviously did some great things in Green Bay, but, clearly the offense had grown stale. Clearly Aaron Rodgers' frustration level was something that was noted and no doubt taken into account here. And it simply was not a team that was viable and certainly not a team that was competing for the kind of championship that they do in Green Bay. And, the original thought, I remember talking to Mark Murphy, the CEO, early in the season, the original thought was that the tension between McCarthy and Rodgers could be worked out. In the end, it could not. And so, Green Bay, after obviously a horrific loss to one of the worst teams in the NFL, they had a decision. They could, wait until the end of the year, or they could move on right now, allow the Packers to begin their search and kind of go about the process of plotting which way they want to go, and allow Mike McCarthy to weigh his options too. And this really was both sides saying, you know what, this is the right time to do it instead of waiting. I think it was coming anyway. They just decided to do it today.
It seems like, though, with the hammer falling as swiftly as it did, that this decision was made a while ago. We win this game. I don't imagine you let them go after a win, but we lose this game. The decision's been made.
Yeah, my understanding was the wheels were in motion for a new coach even before this game. This was just a matter of, are the Packers going to fire Mike McCarthy right now after a horrendous loss, or are they just going to wait till the end of the season? They decided to do it right now, and they're moving on, including Mike McCarthy is going to be an attractive candidate. He'll be moving on as well.
I want to bring in Mike Silver as well, who's on the phone. And Mike, I know you have interviewed Aaron Rodgers before and know how things work in Green Bay. Again, it's one thing that it's a loss. It's another that it's a loss to a team that came into this week 2-9 that you feel like you should beat at home in December in Green Bay.
Well, they're basically saying this season is lost. And, once you get to that mode and you know you're going to make a change, the advantage of doing it now is that you can openly go after coaching candidates and start the process. And say you wanted someone like a Bruce Arians, for example, who is technically available now, you could, in theory, try to start closing that deal. So, I think you have to step back and look at the bigger picture for a second. He's had a long run there, he and Aaron Rodgers together. They won one Super Bowl, came very, very close to getting back in 2014, seemed to have control of that NFC Championship game in Seattle. But I think a lot of people will look back and say that organizationally they did not maximize that window. And of course, Aaron Rodgers still has years left, and so the window's not totally closed. But, to Mike McCarthy's credit, he didn't publicly complain about what I would regard as an organizational passivity when it came to player acquisition during that time. And I know Mike McCarthy would have preferred, as a lot of Packer fans would have, that the front office would have gone after more players, been more aggressive in free agency and prospective trades. That said, we do have a new front office, new general manager, and Brian Gutekunst and Mark Murphy, the CEO of the organization, taking a much larger role. So this is a completely new era now in Green Bay.
Hey, Mike, some people like to watch soap operas, but as the world turns, I prefer to watch the soap opera in Green Bay. I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about this decision, including, I think, the interesting angle you brought up about Bruce Arians' potential availability and how attractive this job might be for him as well. More to come, certainly, on this story. Thank you for hanging out with us, Michael Silver, and giving us some insight into Mike McCarthy getting fired in Green Bay. A quick look at the scores as they stand now in the afternoon games. We've got more news, analysis, highlights, and football coming back after the break.